Good evening. Welcome to Speak Up Newport. My name's Ed Sellich. I'm president of Speak Up Newport. Speak Up Newport's your community forum to discuss civic issues. We do a monthly program 10 times a year. We also put on the mayor's dinner and also give scholarships to our local high schools. First off, I want to thank the bungalow for the food out there. Let's give them a hand for that good food. Thanks to Jim and Kay Walker for that. Also, we have some VIPs here this evening. Mayor Diane Dixon. Diane, I know you're here somewhere. There she is. Councilmember Jeff Herdman. Jeff. And Councilwoman Joyce Brenner. Joy Brenner. She nailed me for that earlier, calling her Joyce and not Joy. Also, we've got comment cards on the seats there, so if you can fill those out, we'd appreciate it. We want to know how you heard about us. Helps us with our advertising of our meetings, and also if you have any suggestions for future programs, we want to put on programs that you want to hear, so don't make us guess, but give us some ideas, and we'd appreciate that. And our program this evening is on organic waste recycling, and we've got two great speakers here this evening. Our first speaker is our Public Works Director, Dave Webb, and he came to the city with over 31 years of experience. He oversees the city's capital improvement program, about $74 million, civil and transportation engineering, public right-of-way development and permitting, capital project construction, inspection, traffic and traffic signal system operations, surface water quality, and municipal maintenance. So Dave does a lot for the city, has a lot of responsibility, and we appreciate him being here tonight. And then also from CR&R, our residential trash collection company, we have Dean Ruffridge. He's Senior Vice President, and Dean has an intimate knowledge of municipal solid waste programs as well as public sector business issues. He runs the company's municipal franchises in Orange, Los Angeles, and Imperial counties. He has a graduate degree in public administration from SC and more than 20 years experience in solid and liquid waste management. So we've got a couple of good speakers here this evening. After they get done speaking, they'll be taking questions and answers from the audience. So with that, I'm going to introduce Dave, and we'll get on with the program. Dave?
Thank you, Ed. And thanks for coming tonight. This is a great crowd. I didn't know there's this many people interested in trash. So, I'm going to set you off right, because I'm going to let you know that just because I have a driver's license, I call myself a traffic engineer, and my traffic engineers tell me I'm not. So, I know about refuge too. I've been hauling out since my dad told me empty the rooms every night, get in the can. Monday, it's always on the curb. Been doing that for all my life, so that makes me an expert, kinda. No, to paraphrase that, I'm going to talk real general tonight. Trash can be very detailed. You'd think it's a simple subject. In fact, we were just joking on it. Pick it up, take it out, bury it. No, it's not. It's very complex, and there's a lot of very good experts in this room. I know a lot of our folks have been doing this for a long time, so pardon me if I step on anybody's toes or say something wrong, but I'm going to give you kind of an overview. And then Dean's with us tonight, actually runs a company, CR&R, that actually handles refuge and has a lot of great knowledge and detail. So if you want to really dive into the deepness of it, I'm going to turn to Dean, but I'll see what we can do to start. So let's move into this wonderful topic. I like this slide because it's going to ground us a little bit. You know, what are we talking about here? Let's get some background about disposal. It wasn't long ago that we just basically collected it and dumped it, and that's what mankind's been doing for a long time. You can see the early ages. You've probably seen some of this, and it used to go to landfills or holes in the ground. As I worked in various cities, I'd find these things. There were several over in Huntington Beach where I worked before that never knew about it. We have a corporate yard over here off Superior and Newport Boulevard. It's got a big landfill in the back of it that's now our yard. So our old habit was to just find it, bury it, and we're on. We also used to just burn it. Anybody remember this? Yeah. See that guy on that incinerator? Remember that too? Who did that? We had one of those in my backyard, and that's one of the ways I got rid of trash. So, well, we don't do that anymore. So, as you know, it led to other problems. We had smog, air pollution. If you grew up here through the 70s and the 60s, I remember running in PE and having smog alerts and things like that. So the rules started changing. We had mounds and mounds of garbage and what we're going to do about it. So with that, we started seeing changes, and we ended up having the federal government step in and the state governments come in, and they start passing major laws to try to address it. Obviously, the population's growing, the refuge and the emissions are growing. So they started passing various laws, and you probably are familiar with the Clean Air Act, which brought in the AQMD. The Clean Water Act, which I deal with our water quality and various things like that, and various state laws that compound on that. So California went further, and they've gone and through their refuge works. They knew we're running out of landfill space. They knew they had other issues that were causing problems, and the citizenry changed too. They wanted to start seeing recycling. They wanted to see reuse of the materials. So they started passing various assembly bills and Senate bills, and I have them listed here. We're going to talk about these a little bit. But the real goal is to reduce the amount of material going to the landfill, because we were running out of landfill space, and also to help address greenhouse gases that are coming out of those landfills. And it's just a good thing to recycle. We got all this great aluminum, steel, and stuff going in this hole. Why don't we take that and redo it? So good laws came out of there. This is kind of a summary of those laws, and I know it's kind of small, and we'll talk a little bit about each one of these, but starting back in basically 1989, we start seeing the first bills come along, the AB 939, which really started the diversion, we call it. And the word diversion in this means we used to take in that hole and dump it in there. We don't want you to do that anymore. We want you to put it somewhere else. And diversion is, let's take it and recycle it. Let's reuse it. Let's do something with it so we're not putting it in the landfill. So the original goals, as you might have remembered, 25% by 1995. We've gone way past that. We've gone down the road. We're doing really good. 50% by 2000. That was the original thoughts. Then came along some other laws. They said, well, let's ramp it up a little bit. AB 341 came along, and that had to do with commercial recycling and getting them involved and ramping up our diversion goal again to 75% in years to come. We have AB 1826 that came in. We started talking about commercial organic recycling. We're going to have more on that tonight. And then AB 1594 has changed things, because I'll tell you what we used to do with our organics, and they're telling us not to do that anymore. So that was where we can't use it for alternative cover, and we'll cover it a little bit. And then currently the latest bill, AB 1383, is telling us we need to find ways to recycle our organic material even more and dispose of it. They want us to take it out of the landfill and do something else with it, and they want us to basically reduce that amount going to the landfill by about 75% in 2020, and they also want us to deal with edible food and maybe doing something with that too. So there's language in that bill. So from those who've been here a long time, and maybe those who are interested in how we used to do it, the city used to operate, like most cities, its own refuge system. We had our own collection system. That top slide is our prior city employees that used to collect your refuge throughout the city. And we did this for a long, long time, decades. And as we got into the recyclable phases, those first assembly bills, we used to take that mixed waste, basically, and you could just say everything, if you're familiar with how we did it. Everything went on the curb. In wonderful Newport Beach, you don't get charged for your trash. You can put out as much as you want. So we'd pull up to a house, and there's 15, 20 cans there, mattresses, couches. It all got hauled away. Ended up in the landfill, and we all felt real good about that until they made us feel bad about it. So we started taking it to the first early material recovery facilities, the CRT diversions with the county. And then it really kind of ramped up when in 2014, we decided to outsource our refuge collection, on a residential collection that is, to CR&R, our current hauler on that. And with that changeover, we also started introducing some new methods. In that lower picture you're probably familiar with, we started introducing automation, which is good. Where there were a lot of injuries in the old process, a lot of swampers throwing trash, picking up your couch that you left out. I mean, those things were heavy. So now we got a truck that'll pick that up and put it in there. But with the automation came the ability to sort separate. So our current system is based on that. We have mixed waste cans, and we have commingled recyclables. And make sure you put the commingled recyclables in the commingled can. We'd always tell people that, and we look in there and, no, you can't put the dog stuff in there. You got to put the recyclables in there. But we have that system right now that we're using. And that's the first step in diversion and recycling. So a little further on, and again, I'm promising organics in a little bit. I just want to give you some background on how we got to this point. We are now recycling. We have these cans of commingled material. What do we do with this? We want to make sure we recycle. So we come into kind of following along AB 939 and AB 341 still. We're going into diversion. What do we do with this material? So we come into what we call the material recovery facility. And a lot of the major haulers, we call them arterial run haulers, have these facilities. And basically, the closest one I know is over in Huntington Beach. Rainbow, now Republic, has a facility over there. It's a large industrial complex. The material goes in here, and the picture shows you they put it in as a little bob loader up there, drops it on a belt. They start separating this stuff. It's a process of manual labor and mechanical labor, and it kind of goes through a process, and you take out things at a time. First step would be take out the big bulky stuff. Get rid of that big couch that you have, take it over here and take it apart. Take the washing machine, take that out. Take the big boxes out, then you end up with less, and then it goes through a magnet, and they pull out the metals, and they do some reverse currents through it, which blows the aluminum out because it's all high tech, but it's kind of neat to see these facilities. So that's how we're kind of doing it now with the recyclables, so we can get it down to something that we can use. And these are actual pictures of a MRF, basically. Didn't pick any one. I'm sorry it's green. I didn't pick that company by chance. I just happened to see these pictures. So you can see the big pile. All this stuff that you leave at the curb goes in the truck. The truck comes in, backs up there, and you see that big pile there. That's what it looks like. Then it goes over to the next side and it starts going through these conveyors and sorters, and you can't see them in the picture, maybe you can. There's some folks up there, and they're pulling out various components. They might be pulling out glass, and there's bottles next to them. There might be cardboard or something like that. The shot in the middle kind of gives you a spread of how big these facilities can get. And then as it gets done, at the bottom there, you see some bins. It starts saying, okay, we've got all the aluminum over here and all the steel over here and all the plastics, which is a whole nother thing. And that gets now picked up, and we can take that to reuse. We can take the steel out and remelt it down. We can take the aluminum, go make some 737 Maxes or whatever we're going to do with it. So that's the MRF. And that was where we were at. And there's this whole other can that had that other stuff in it, the dog stuff, the concrete. We're starting to look at that now. That's where the organics are. So we need to bring it back and even process more. We want to divert more out of the landfill. And I'm sorry, too. On this, there's a whole discussion here. In fact, I was just talking to one of our haulers here. What do we do with recycles? Getting it to be reused is a whole other problem. So right now we're working on that solution. So we're going to steer away from the dry recyclables. Sorry if I can make my one unit. And start talking about the organics, which you guys wanted to hear about tonight. So organic waste, what is that? This pie chart there kind of shows you, this is 2014, California Waste Management, which we call Cal Recycle, went out and did a survey. And they said, we've looked at all our material going to our landfill, and what we're showing is organics of that is 34%. And then paper, compostable paper is 7%, and all the rest of the material, the concrete and the bricks and part of that couch I couldn't use, is the 59%. So we've got a big slug that's going to the landfill that's just organic material. And a list up there of what the organics comprises of. Food waste is one of them. Your yard trimmings. When we trim trees, what do we do with all those trees that we chip every day, That's organic material. Leaves, grass, trimming, branches. Non-hazardous wood, and paper. Paper's organic. We get a lot of paper. So what do we do with this material? So the state started saying that's a lot of material going to the landfill. We need to find a way to try to divert some of that out of the landfill too. So again, we mentioned these bills that came along that they passed. Here's AB 1826. They started talking about, well, let's deal with the commercial side of it right now. In the commercial side, we're going to pass a rule that basically says the jurisdictions have to start with their commercial enterprises, restaurants, large businesses and stuff, have to start having a plan and be part of a program to recycle their organics. And that would be a business at multi-unit residential, 5 units or more, things like that, is what the bill addressed. And in that, we have mandatory recycling components. And the compliance level here is a goal. I say goal, luckily. It's not a complete mandate because we're making it, of 50% of organic disposal removal out of the landfill by 2020. Currently, right now, we're about 28% into 2018, which is good compared to some folks I hear. I'm sorry, am I making that sound? Okay. So we are on our way to that, but that's part of the discussion we're starting to have. How do we start addressing that? How do we get that 28% up to the goal of 50%? And again, it deals with businesses, and right now anything that generates more than 4 cubic yards of organic material when you're a business, if you're a restaurant, thank you for the wonderful dinner tonight at the bungalow. They probably have to deal with this right away. So I put a little picture in there. That's a 4-yard bin right there. That's what you typically see in the back of a restaurant or something, those big bins. It's about a 4-yard bin. If they generate that much material a week, then they need to have their own organics program. That's what the law is saying. So we're working with that right now. We have our franchise folks we're working with. There's several folks in town that have to have a program. I understand it's going to get stricter. It might go to 2 yards. And again, I'm only going to caveat that this law, my haulers know much better than I do, but it's fluid. There's things changing. They've passed laws, but I don't know if it's going to work. Maybe we need to adjust it or not. So we can talk about that. But right now, that's how they're doing it. If you're making 4 cubic yards or more, you need to have a program, and we need to take care of that material and handle it separately. So then there was that AB 1594 law, and this one is interesting. So we get all this organic material, all these tree trimmers, all those folks that leave your house with the stuff and you wonder where it goes to a big pile somewhere, and then we've got all this green waste. It's actually good waste, but for a long time, our landfills were just, as I said, disposal areas. We'd go up, pick it up, throw it in the landfill. What was the biggest complaint with landfills way back when you guys were growing up? See all those birds up there? Oh my God, there's birds all over the place. Rats, all kinds of stuff. Bears, who went to Yosemite? Crawling through it. Smell, oh my gosh. Living next to a landfill, it's like living over an airport. So we have to cover this material every night, and the best way to do that back then was just take a dozer and put a bunch of dirt over it. Well, that worked, except that it took a lot of the volume of the landfill up. You know, you kept putting all this dirt in it every night, and that's the place I should be putting the trash. So somebody came along with and tried this and said, well, we're dumping all this green waste anyway. Why don't we save it and put it on top? And every night they'd put the green waste on top. And guess what? A foot of green waste, it smelled like the Febreze in your bathroom. I mean, the place smelled good, took the smell away, kept the birds out, and it worked really good. So we called that alternative cover. We've been doing that for many years, but this bill here, somebody said, hey, wait a minute. That's kind of cheating. You're using the stuff we're supposed to be diverting in the landfill as part of the landfill, so you're really not diverting it. So what we're going to do is say, okay, you can still do that, but you're not going to get a diversion credit. Remember, we got to be at 50% diversion, right? That was a lot of diversion because I'd get credit to say, well, I'm not dumping it technically in the landfill, I'm dumping it on top to get the smell down, the birds and everything else. So there I am. Now it's not counted anymore. So it creates a big problem for us. We have to do something else with that organic material. That's one of the things that's driving it. So we'll give more space in the landfill maybe if it doesn't get treated and put back in the landfill. But we now are addressing that. So then we get this next law that comes out, and this is the most recent one. This is SB 1383. And this is, they call it the short-lived climate pollutants. So again, we're ramping up here, and this law basically says we need 50% reduction in the level of statewide deposit of organic material, not just waste, but organic material by 2014, to the 2014 levels, which is that chart I showed you with the pie chart earlier. They know what the levels are in 2014. They want to get 50% reduction of that by 2020, which is just around the corner. So we are working on that direction. And then they said further 75% reduction by 2025. And then there's some other little components in the law that we haven't quite figured out yet, and I'm going to actually let Dean talk a little bit about this. But they also talk about, and in all that organic material, which is tree trimmings and brush and things, there's also food waste. We'd like to find a way to take 20% of that eligible food waste, which you guys did really good tonight. You didn't leave any, right? It's cleaned up, Jim? But if it wasn't cleaned up, Jim would have to take it over and try to find somebody to take it, because part of it was, can you get about 20% of that and reuse it? Can we get it back to people who need it? Which is a good cause, but logistically, I don't know if we have all the answers on that yet. So that was that bill, and this is where we're really kind of focusing right now. How are we going to address this? Municipalities like us have to take that in consideration, and we're held accountable for that. So we got our green waste coming in, our wood waste that comes in, this organic waste, our fibrous paper, biosolids. If you'd like to know more about biosolids, I'll tell you later. It's something that's treated. And then food waste we talked about. So how does this impact the local governments? As a generator, the generators include these folks: single-family, multifamily residences, businesses, entities outside our jurisdiction. Our school district is one of those, all within the city of Newport Beach. and then we get impacted by that because we're the local jurisdiction that oversees this. So we need to probably look at all this and look at how we do our contracts, our franchises, our permits, and how we address this. And we are achieving our target levels for a new collection of generators. We have to make sure we do that. We have to achieve target levels for new sources of organic recycling and eligible food. I mentioned the 20%. We have to achieve these. And then we have achieving target levels of new oversight. Someone said trash police. That's coming up too. How do we see this? How do we make sure we're compliant with this? So we have target levels we're going to have to achieve in all this. Sorry, my keeps changing there. So how does this impact the city then? So we have our organic waste collection. We're talking about source separation and mix separation. We may have to change the way we collect our refuge right now. And I think that's what we have to start talking about as an organization. We as staff are starting to talk with that, with our haulers, with our council members. How are we going to do this? How are we going to make this? Right now I mentioned, remember we have 2 carts, and one right now has all your mixed recycles in it, and one has the non-mixed in your greens. How do I get that green waste out of there and get it sorted and put in a different container so I can move it? That might be a change. How do I deal with things on the peninsula where there's no room, or I have no room for more carts? There's a lot of complexities in this. So those are all things we're going to have to look at. The edible food program, I'm not sure what yet. We haven't got down to it. I'm going to refer to Dean. He has some ideas and maybe how the industry's having that. There's an educational component starting tonight with you folks, starting to talk about this dialogue, starting to get the fact out. We're going to have to change a little bit to make sure we can comply with these laws. Monitoring the contamination of on-site inspections, things like that. This is the garbage police. We will probably need, like when we first rolled out the 2-can system, some people just didn't get it or wouldn't get it. They would not put the stuff in the right bin. We'd go out and say, okay, this is the recycle bin, but your pizza's in here. That's the wrong place for the pizza. It needs to go over here. So there's going to be some level of education, and some people just keep putting their pizza in there, so there's going to be another guy coming, another time I'm going to write you a ticket. So we may get into that kind of code compliance. But that's in the requirements. We have to do this. And then planning for adequate capacity, procurement of recyclable products. There's other things in this. If we produce all this stuff, we need to use it. So there's requirements that the jurisdiction, like the city, actually uses some of this. So we use recycled products now. We buy compost. We used recycled motor oil in our fleets. We recycle paper, things like that. But that may ramp up. We may have to use more. Because truthfully, you think about the organics. Let's say we make this material. We do something with it. Should we bring it back and let's put it back in our gardens or something like that? We need to close that loop. So there's parts of the law that are going to address that. And then, of course, with any good government practice, there's additional reporting requirements. That's the part I'm going to love. So, yeah, there'll be lots of paperwork. There'll be lots of reporting. And we report now with our haulers, and the city reports. And if we don't get the right numbers, then the state comes over and talks to us, and things can happen. So let's talk about the cards a little bit. And again, I'm going to paraphrase this. We haven't chosen any particular direction. We're just starting now. I've got several council members working with me. We're starting to talk about the law, what our current systems are, constraints. But we want to start identifying things. So right now we have the 2-cart system, and that's a wet-dry system that we could go to. And if this might be one option. We take our 2 carts now, and we just change the way we use the carts. So in one cart would be non-recyclables and recyclable materials. That would be how we'd split it up. And we'd put the wet, let's say we take our dry recyclables now, which are tin cans, bottles, cardboard, and things like that, and we put in with our dry other waste, bricks, concrete, things like that, the couch that I can shove in that can. And then on this other can that I just freed up that was my recyclables, I start putting in my wet stuff in there. That could be my pizza box, my grass trimmings. It could also be a wet brick, because the big thing here is wet and dry as we're trying to do. And then we can take that dry material to the MRF, which I showed you, and they can pretty well sort out that stuff. They can get the cans and the metal out with all the processes. They can pick things out. And out at the end of the conveyor belt might come a smaller stream of that stuff we can't use. The dry, inert material, the files, the shavings, the brick, and that material then might go to the landfill. So that cart's taken care of. And then the other cart is that organic cart. Now I'm putting my pizza box in there, but I'm also putting my leaves and my clippings and my branches. now I can deal with that separately because it's been separated from the tin cans and stuff, which would contaminate that and make it difficult to deal with. That material is easily taken to someplace else for processing. So that's one model. We could go to a 3-cart system, which is kind of an offshoot of that. We could put all the recyclable dry things in one. We could put the brick and the other stuff, the inert material in the other, and have a 3rd cart for organic material, leaves, branches, and things. Could work. There's some places that do both these now. Costa Mesa and Stanton are using the 2-cart model. They seem to be having some success. Other places, Newport Beach, Santa Ana Heights, San Clemente, and where I live, Mission Viejo, has a 3-cart model. Seems to be working. The 3-cart might yield a little bit more efficiency, but trade-offs are, who's got room in the garage in the peninsula for another cart? Could be a problem. So, should we talk about the 4-cart system? Okay, maybe not in Newport, but in some places. So 4-cart would just expand that even more. You might have the 3-cart system, and what we do is we add a smaller little cart, and the food waste goes in there, because food waste can be treated a little different than just the pure lawn clippings and the leaves and the bulky organic stuff. So there's a 4-cart model that might work out there. I don't know if that's going to be Newport or not, and again, we'll be working with our council. When we start figuring out the cost of these and maybe the process, we're going to come back and probably start talking to you more. And then other things come into mind too. When you pick a cart system, let me just make sure, here's my diversion carts. Right now, again, I said on the screen right here, you can see our current model. We have the 2 carts, it's mixed carts, commingled recyclables, and I don't know, we're not meeting our 50% goal. Can we do that? If we move over to the other side where we have an organic cart, again, just like I mentioned, we might capture 34% more, which is all recyclables. That's the stuff that's moving through the system now. That might work. But some of the constraints we have, the peninsula, Balboa Island, well, obviously site constraints. These are big carts. Who's got room for all these carts? The other thing is what we find in the carts. Here are these police guys again. I actually have folks looking at your trash cans sometimes. They're not looking to police you. They're just kind of seeing how can we do this. We have a lot of tourism on Balboa Island on the peninsula. And those folks come in, and guess what? They're not real good about separating. You know, oh gosh, let's make sure we put all our beer cans in here and put our pizza box in here. No, it just put the bags on you, all that goes right in there. So the point being is we might go, maybe those carts just stay the way they are. They're just a total, everything goes in the cart. The good news about that is you've all been on Balboa Island Peninsula. Did you see much green on there? Wish we had more, but there's a lot of concrete. So we have very little organics on there. We have tourism that doesn't separate well. And it's just difficult conditions. The alleys are small. The less trucks we drive down there, the better. So maybe it's better we stick with 1 cart in those areas and we pick it up. And let's see if we can do that. In some of the other areas, Newport Coast, Port Streets, areas that we have more room, more greenways, maybe we do a different cart system there, and that might get us to where we need to be. So we're thinking about something like that too. So we've talked about the pickup and what we have this material. What do we do with it now? We got the solid waste separated, we've got the recyclable separated, it's going to the MRF, we're pulling out the bottles, the tin cans, and recycling that. Smaller amount going to the landfill, and we have the organic material now. Well, here's some thoughts on organics. You're all probably familiar with composting. That's basically taking this organic material, putting it in a heap. Anybody have a composter in their backyard, by the way? Some people actually compost at home, if you're familiar with the same process. We're going to put it somewhere, and we're going to turn it, and we're going to let the heat of the breakdown of the material work on it, and after a while it turns into great stuff you put in your garden. Composting. There's another process called anaerobic digestion. We're going to speed this process up. We're going to put it in a machine or a vessel. We're going to take the air out, anaerobic, and we're going to let it process scientifically real fast through that. And we're going to come out with a different product, really good. It speeds up the composting process. And actually, Dean's going to talk a little bit about it too, because they have an anaerobic digester. And then there's co-digestion. Co-digestion is just a fancy word for we're going to do one of those first two and something else. The something else is, let's say we take the food waste. Let's say we have a 4th cart. We take the food waste. We're going to take that and do something special with it because we can treat it different. There's actually a facility in Orange that takes that food waste and they grind it up, make it real slurrious, and they put it back in the sewer. kind of like your garbage disposal, but really, really good mulch. Because at the end of the sewer pipe, if we've ever had that discussion here, is a big anaerobic digester. The Orange County Sanitation Plan that's where all the sewage goes. It's basically done the same process there, made into a mulch. Maybe there's a solution there. So the fourth system, the code digestion, does it that way. There's some various costs in there. There's, for instance, the lowest cost is composting, $40 to $80 a ton, because that's one of the questions you're going to ask. How much is it going to cost me? Well, I live in Newport. I don't pay for trash. Well, hang out. We're going to talk about that too. But composting, it's the least cost. But the problem with composting, it takes a lot of room. You got to put all this material down. You got to windrow it. You got to take care of it. So, and there's limited opportunities in Orange County. Last I was asking about, can I find 500 acres somewhere? Probably not. So that might be a problem. We might have to haul it somewhere. There's a facility down in San Juan Capistrano. Went out in Riverside, and then we can go to Arizona. So we got limited things we can do there. The anaerobic digestion also takes room. It's a lot of front capital costs, and I'll refer to Dean to talk about his plant. They built one out in Paris, but there's a big front cost to that, and is that the best solution? You still have some land costs, and the fourth one, we don't have an answer on that other than what we have in place. So just some pictures so you can kind of tell what I'm dealing with. This is composting if you've never seen it on a commercial scale. Basically, all that material they talked about, organics, is out there, and they're windrowing it, and there's a machine right in the middle, and it just slowly goes through and turns this material, and that's what slowly gets it to break down. And that material does full cycle and ends up in those bags. Scott's, anything else you buy at Home Depot? I was just there. I picked up a couple bags. In fact, we had a compost event this weekend. Anybody go? Great. Good job, you guys. You got some of that material. So, and that goes back in your flowers and whatever you want to do with it. That's the cycle of composting. Anaerobic digestion, a little more complex. Sorry about the engineering slides. I like these kind of things. I'm kind of geeky. But basically, we're taking that material in, the compost material, and we're going to do it differently. We're going to put it in that processor here. I can actually show you this. Right in here, that's dumped in the truck, goes through this big machine here. A lot of science here I don't want to bore you with. It produces gas and material. The gas comes off, and we can reuse that gas. In fact, Emily's here tonight from the Southern Gulf Gas Company to tell us about that if we need to. Out in the Paris plant, they actually take that gas, clean it up, and pump it and put it back in the natural gas system for Southern California gas, and it goes into your homes and it's burnt. The other way they do it is they put it in their clean energy vehicles. I know most of the major haulers, Webb and CR&R and Waste Management, will pump it into their vehicles now because they're not diesel anymore, they're natural gas. So we can use it that way. Again, you get gas out of the gas could also be processed into electricity on this little slide. We could put it through a generator, create power off it. And then the material itself is broken down. Finally, it comes out the other end, and here we go. We got that great mulch again. I can give you bags of that. We can put it on your garden. So that's anaerobic digestion. And with that, I think probably a good place to have Dean come up and talk about his facility and the industry on that, and then we can take questions if that works. I'll hold questions till the end. Okay, so why don't I have Dean come up, and if you're ready, Dean, and jump right in on, this is their facility, and he's going to talk a little about what our hauler Dean is doing for us and how it works.
Thanks, Dave. Well, all I can say, it's hard to make this stuff up. It's just so complicated. We're in an industry that's probably one of the most highly regulated industries in the world, especially here in California. CR&R has been one company of 3 or 4 here in the county that have stepped up to the plate and invested heavily in organics and green waste processing. We had a similar meeting like this last night in a neighboring city, and there was 2 main topics that all the questions came up. So if you don't mind, I'll hit those 2 topics first and might answer a number of your questions, then get into our facilities that we have invested in. So one of the big topics that came up last night was the food recovery program. Almost 20% of the people that live in Orange County go to bed hungry. Now that may seem kind of strange to you and I, and we live pretty good lives, but there's a lot of people in Orange County that are hungry and need food. So the state regulation, SB 1383, which Dave was talking about, requires jurisdictions to come up with a plan to collect and recover edible food. There's a lot of edible food that maybe it says expired on the can, but it still has a month or 2 left where it can still be used. What CR&R has done is we've partnered with some nonprofit organizations in Orange County. where they've purchased vehicles. They've gotten some grants to purchase vehicles. They're picking up edible food from restaurants, edible food from grocery stores, and so forth. And they're sharing this food on a daily basis. You may have seen some of the trucks, harvest trucks around town, OC, not waste OC. There's a number of trucks around, and this is getting very popular. Under SB 1383, each city is required or mandated, if you will, to come up with a plan and have it approved by the state. So I would say by September or October of this year, Newport will have a plan in place. I'm sure you will. And we'll have some options for you can choose from. The other thing that came up last night, which was really important to the homeowners in the audience, was organics at the curbside. We have the mandate organics at the commercial businesses, and there's a number of haulers in Newport Beach that do commercial here. But what about the curbside? What about my home? As of the end of this year, the green waste that we pick out of your trash can now goes for alternative daily cover. And it's pretty dirty. It's got pieces of glass in it, it's got pieces of plastic in it, and so forth and so forth. That cannot be composted. That cannot be put through an anaerobic digester. As of the end of this year, and the city will need to make a decision very soon, we will have to make a decision how we're going to collect organics at the curbside. Now, when I talk about organics, I'm not talking about just green waste. I'm talking about food scraps from the household, from your kitchen. By January 1 of 2022, the city of Newport, as well as every other city in California, is mandated to have a curbside food collection program. And when Dave was talking about a fourth can up there, some cities that have 3 cans now may choose to go to a fourth. Some cities that have 3 cans now may choose to use CR&R and do a co-collection project, which co-collects green waste and food in the same can. And that can go to the anaerobic digester and be digested. What we've had very big success on in this part of the county is a 2-can program, and I'm going to refer to Costa Mesa right next door. I'm going to refer to Stanton, very, very close. It's a 2-can program. They go to a wet-dry approach. As Dave was talking about, the dry materials in one, wet in the other. Wet would be your coffee grounds, your food scraps, your green waste, your flowers, your oranges that you don't use off of your orange tree in the backyard. All of that stuff is considered wet trash, and it's all digestible. It's all can be recycled. It all can go to our Paris anaerobic digester. Now, what's left in the mixed waste can that's dry? Well, you've got a lot of things in there. You got plastics, you got cans, you got newspapers, although there's not many newspapers anymore like there were 10 years ago. A lot of cardboard. My wife loves Amazon. There's cardboard every day. So, believe it or not, in that can that's left in the dry, it's almost 80% recyclable. So, theoretically, we could get to a 20% residual in this city with a lot of outreach and a lot of education. Success stories like Costa Mesa have gone all over the country. They're doing 62% recyclables in their organics cart in that town, which is about the same population as Newport. Ed, a little bit larger? A little larger. They're doing almost 1,200 tons a month from their organics cart at the curbside. And it's voluntary. Now, the other thing I want to talk about, voluntary mandatory. Everything's voluntary right now. But in 2022, city police might be at your door. The state police might be at your door. It's mandatory. We don't have a choice. We have to separate our grain. We have to separate our food. And that's one thing that the environmental groups love. It's difficult for cities to mandate and tell you what you have to do and to charge you for it. And it's difficult for the hauling industry. We have some haulers besides CR&R here tonight. It's difficult for us to man up, buy the trucks, buy the equipment, and find the facilities. So the facility you're looking at right here is called an anaerobic digester. And this is a 4-phase project, of which 2 phases, the 2 domes, are fully done and almost fully sold out. We have kept room in those first 2 phases for some cities that have not signed up for it so far, including Newport Beach, should that be the way you wish to go. But in the first two phases have cities like Costa Mesa, Aliso Viejo, Stanton, San Clemente. San Clemente and Costa Mesa were the first two cities in Orange County to sign up, and they've been doing this program almost 2 years. Laguna Niguel just signed up. They just did a new contract with us. And La Habra, which is up in the North County, they just signed up to start the program July 1st. Some cities that are pending are like Laguna Hills, Tustin, Lake Forest, Orange, and of course Newport Beach. Those cities are still on we've offered each one of those cities that are pending space in our anaerobic digester, but we will be sold out August 1st. So it's kind of imminent that the city of Newport Beach have these town hall meetings and make a decision pretty soon if they want to use that project. Now in Costa Mesa, I wanted to go back to that just a second, and some of you may know people in Costa Mesa, but 2 years ago when we started looking at this project, and we needed to have one city to start with. You need to have something to start with to get funding and get financing, and most of you know about financing. Costa Mesa had 9 town hall meetings before they acted anything. And we had, Don, I think you might have been to 1 or 2, but we had hundreds of people come to these town hall meetings like what you're doing tonight. And I think out of that population, or that city over there of 22,000 households, I think everybody was convinced at the end that yes, I will spend another $2 a month. I want to do the right thing. And they enacted that $2 a month, and they had hardly any complaints. And it's been working very well, and their diversion rate is huge. It's one of the highest diversion rates in the whole county. So what else do I want to talk about? Commercial, I think Dave went through commercial pretty well. The commercial haulers, of which there are a number in the city, are really working hard with the commercial businesses. The city's kind of put that on the backs of the haulers and mandated them to do the organics programs with each one of their customers. So we'll see how that goes. I think we've got till the end of the year, Dave, to get in full compliance. So this is going to be a pretty important year, and probably a couple phone calls to Dave and Diane's office about why do I have to do this. So with that, I'll leave it open for questions. Dave and I can hopefully answer them for you, sir.
So I'm trying to make this not complicated. If you were to have a 3-cart system, that means 3 trips by
Right.
with trucks.
Correct.
3 trips in a day, probably.
That's correct.
You sell this service to the city, I'm sure at a profit. Is it less expensive for you? Would you charge the city more or less for a 3-cart system with more separation at the curb, or with a 2-cart system with the digester?
Good question. I don't think I can answer. Can't give you prices tonight. I don't. There,
want to quote, but
yeah.
you've got to buy trucks, you've got to do
Yes.
things, and you're paying freight on a not quite yet full
Well,
fare, which is
yeah.
as Dave has mentioned, there are places in the city where 3 carts
Right.
might be fine, and there are certainly places where it would be challenging, if not impossible.
The reason why it's hard to even quote on anything, and is the city of Newport years ago, before Ed, I think, developed this transfer station down on Superior Avenue, and that transfer station is saving the city and residents a ton of money, believe me, because you have but you have a local outlet where we can transfer it out in the larger rigs. So that alone will always be a savings for the city compared to any city around us. So with that, we can take green waste directly from there out to Paris. We can take recyclables from there directly to our clean MRF on Western Avenue, and we can take mixed waste directly to our I don't like to use the word dirty MRF, but our mixed MRF over on Knott Avenue in Stanton. So that helps a lot as far as now and in the future for Newport Beach.
Hugh and I are going to try the microphone approach so everybody could hear you. So we had this side. Why don't you take your side, Hugh, and then I'll take him next. Okay, you're next.
So this is a little bit kind of following on his. Some of the stuff doesn't require pickup like on a weekly basis. Like I would think green waste might be one of those items where you would have a bi-weekly pickup. Wouldn't there be variations you could do to lighten the traffic load, that type of thing?
It's a possible green waste and trash is mandated by the state to be weekly collection. There are some cities throughout the country that do bi-weekly recyclables where they don't push recycling, but I don't think you'll find many of those in California.
Hello, how are you? I find you very disingenuous saying your first statement was 20% of people go hungry at night in Orange County. That's a complete fabrication. Number one, we have food stamps, we have SNAP, we have churches. I know I would never go hungry. So that's a very bad statement. Number two, the police are not going to come to my house in 2022 because my trash isn't right. So why do you try to intimidate people with that? I think actually, I don't care for your presentation.
Is this on? Is this on? The question I have is how do how do you factor in on a residential side the waste that goes down to garbage disposal?
I think credit. So, Jim, good question. I think what he's referring to is, let's say a certain percentage of the waste goes down the garbage disposal. Do we get credit for that or not credit? How does it factor into organics 50%, if I'm thinking right? I don't have an answer to that. I don't know if we have any means of figuring how much goes down the sewer to the sanitation plant. There might be historical means they could figure out what their loading was and what it isn't. I'm guessing it's a small percentage because it's really tough in a residential home to put a lot of that material. Even in a restaurant, when I work restaurants, as a dishwasher, we'd clog that drain up and we'd hear about it. So I don't know if that's a big factor on it.
Yeah, but the reason I ask is because statistically, residential grease is greater than all the restaurants combined that go down the disposals. And so in restaurants, garbage disposals have become obsolete. We hardly ever use our disposal just for that reason. We have separate containers for our grease. We have separate containers for our organic waste. And so the disposal has become obsolete. So I would think that there should be some type of remedy or recognition that a lot of this waste on the residential side is creating a greater problem than commercial waste.
And to that point, go back to 2014, we were probably doing the same process in our homes as we are now, and that's what they measured against, and that's what we're going to be held as a goal against, 50% diversion of that. So whatever is going down the drain and what quantity is probably still going there. Actually, that's not a bad thing other than it messes with our sewer system a little bit. The digesters love grease and fats and oils because it's very high in energy calories. So getting it there is a problem. We don't usually recommend grease going down the drains because if we get a clog, then we get a water quality spill, and that's another problem. So we have programs we call fats, oils, and greases where we work with the restaurants. As Jim's right, aggregate-wise, we have so many homes, there's probably more grease from residential going into the sewer, but as a point discharge, a restaurant's much bigger on that. If they dump a couple things of grease, they're going to get a clog. We'll have a fill on that. So we do clean, just on that note, we clean our sewers at least every 18 months, if not 12 months, and in the high spots, we know the grease builds up. We're out there all the time just so we don't get that and have a water quality spill. Hopefully that answers your question, Jim.
Okay, well, I'm one of the bad people that is too lazy to use your garbage disposal most of the time, and I don't call it to my tenant's attention at all. I think just any attention paid, put on the rules with the normal care of your apartment and whatnot. On the peninsula, we're just loaded with tenants, and if we don't tell them, use your garbage disposal and do it properly and stop with all the garbage. I've been irritated with one of my tenants that has his parents are sending him those food packages. He doesn't like them, so they're out there heavy in the trash every week. I mean, wouldn't it be wise for the city to put some notice out that this is what's happening to us? We've got a bunch of lazy people. When it comes to the garbage.
I think getting a little off track on the garbage disposal, I don't know if that's the solution or the problem. That's just, there's a means there and people use it as they do. Not many people use it as a disposal of, hey, I'm going to take all my yard waste and food and shove it down there. It's when you're cleaning your sink and you have a little thing, that's what it's made for. And that waste goes down. if you overload your garbage disposal, I'm sure 1 or 2 people in this room have poured their oil down their drain, and guess what? It coagulates about 30 feet down the line and causes a backup in your house. That's what we're trying not to have. But in the food goes down there and sits. So a little bit's probably not a problem. If we turn the system into that's what we're going to use. The sewer system was not designed or built to put all the refuge down the sewer system. Just as a note. So any other questions on the dry side?
You mentioned earlier on about the possibility for payment, so I believe you've probably thought about it. Since Newport historically doesn't pay directly in the water bill directly for trash, what are you thinking would be the cost of any of these alternatives?
So I can't speak for the council or how we're going to pay it. As you know, in Newport Beach, and I don't even know if I have a recommendation, but I will say that it's very unusual for a city to have free trash to its residents, and I think as we've seen over the years, there was probably a thought of what type of trash it is, but now to recycle and now to do organics, those are added layers on the costs that were never envisioned in the normal pickup cycle. So the city does have a recycle fee, and I think we'll be looking at that. And we may, as all of us, need to pitch in more to handle this process, because it's something we need to do, and it's going to cost more, as Dean alluded to. There is a cost for aerobic digestion. There's a cost for composting. There's a cost for separation of trucks. So if it's the right thing to do and the city puts these onuses on us, we're probably going to have some kind of level of fee. And I can't go any further than that, because I don't even know if the council, we haven't even talked about money yet. We're just trying to deal with the, okay, what do we have to do? So. Yeah, and I think to the question, I don't know what the right solution is at the end, and I think it'll be some kind of combination of different schemes like the Peninsula might have. Let's say they have 2 completely mixed waste cans, and the Port Streets have 3 cans. Our achievement goal is as a city total. We might do it different than one to the other, because they have more ability to carry trash, or I can't separate it. So we'll look at that. There probably will be some cost in that. I just don't know what it is yet. So wish I had more information on that. And to what you mentioned, yes, on the Peninsula, not a lot of green. The city, for instance, we trim all the trees and we take that, and that gets counted against organics. It's nice. It's separated. It's taken by the tree trimmers. We count it, and it goes right into some kind of processing plant. So that's a pretty good way to simplify the Peninsula. You get in the Port Streets, Newport Coast, a lot of big lawns, a lot of greenways, different characteristics and different solutions up there. How about other questions?
Okay, I've got a question. Can you please clarify on the newest bill? I thought that it said multifamily units. This was the first I've seen of single-family homes. So that's part 1. And part 2 is for those of us who want to help with the environment but are very resistant to being told what to do or having it policed. Can you help us understand what this actually would look like in our home and in our trash can? For those of us who deals with raccoons in the neighborhood all the time, I'm envisioning a filthy, dirty trash can outside my garage with raccoons coming in, it's stinking to high heaven, and yucky bugs in it. So for those of us that not only are a bit resistant but also really new to it, we don't really know what it's going to look like. Can you explain that, as well as clarifying single family versus multifamily?
So I can clarify a little. The current law has a couple different levels in it, and the one that said multifamily was the commercial organics, which included commercial units and residential units of 5 units or more. That was just a level the state said. So if you had a 2-plex, that doesn't apply to you. The next level of laws do apply. We have to meet organics to a certain level, which will be residential, any single family, apartments, and it'll be how we collect them. To the question about the cans, as I mentioned, Refuge has a certain thing about it, and if you're gonna, you could have organics can, and it could be messy depending on what you put in it. If you want to pour all your, deep fried oil in there, which is organic, and I'm not saying you do that, but if someone does that, they're going to have a messy can. I don't know, Dean, I don't know if you have any suggestions, or when you're working with organics, what you found with a separate can in Costa Mesa?
Well, let me address the multifamily first. And we have a number of multifamily residential green waste and organics programs throughout Orange County. Some cities have already mandated it. They can have a 96-gallon container, a 3-yard container, or a 4-yard container for green waste only. By 2022, or it's 24, I think it's 22, it's mandated that multifamily also has a separate food scrap collection program. And cities will have the option of having 2 bins out there, or 3 bins, one for trash, maybe one for recycling to comply with AB 341, one for green waste to comply with 1826, and then one for food scraps. The solution that we have in some of our cities is that we're doing a co-collection project so the food can go in with the green. So what happens when food or oils go in with the green? What we've noticed is that the greasy foods, as well as the chicken bones or the steak, if you will, it's the odors and the liquids are being absorbed by the green waste. So the grass clippings and the branches and the leaves and so forth are absorbing a lot of those liquids before collection.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
What I'm asking is, if now the way we do it in our regular trash is we bag everything to minimize smell and minimize animals, can we still do that? If it's all forced into one can now, there will obviously be more smell and all that. I mean, you have no idea what the battle we have with the raccoons, some of us in our neighborhoods.
Neither project, either our composting sites, and we have the composting site in San Juan, or the anaerobic digester will not take plastic whatsoever. So if plastics are in there, if your city will allow plastics, there'll have to be a pre-sort prior to it going into either facility, which of course is a manual labor type of situation, and there's a cost factor.
And I guess to your question, we would probably mandate or discourage putting plastic in your green waste bin. And I understand there's an odor question. I have a 3-bin system. I put all my food and my green waste in, and I have what Dean expressed. Mine's Waste Management Mission Viejo. I don't get smells. My yard waste covers up all that smell, and it's collected every week. Do I have to clean that can more? I don't find that, but I don't have the animals you'd have. I do have an open space, and I could, but we'll have to figure a solution to that. When you're working in the mountains, the bears in the cans are bear-proof. So maybe we need a raccoon-proof can or something. I'm not sure, but we'll have to cross that bridge when we get to it. Yeah.
Does food recycling translate into reusable food? And if so, what are some examples of that?
That's a great question. Food scrap recycling is not edible food. It's food that's been used, it's been prepared. It may be scraps from your plate. It may be scraps from a kitchen in a restaurant. That is not reusable, but it is recyclable. So food that has, for example, if Vons or Ralph's has a head of lettuce that's starting to wilt, and that is reusable. Somebody can use that. That can be picked up by the nonprofits and spread out to the hungry. Does that answer the question? That's correct.
We got time for one more question here.
Hey, Dave. I'm a Newport Beach resident, but I pay for my trash. And I was hoping to advocate that we get into the system of free in our neighborhoods. We already participate in the 2-can, and it works really well. I'm a proponent of the Toucan system. We're in the Costa Mesa Sand District, and it's not really the city, it's the Costa Mesa Sand District in which that all occurred at. So just the city has to go alone. So at this go around, this time, can we be included in the city when you negotiate this?
I would actually probably, it's probably a council question. You get into LAFCO and boundaries, you're already in a sanitation district collection area. Even though the physical boundary, as you mentioned, that we have areas in town that you're within the physical boundary of Newport Beach, but we have different servers in our city. His collection is done by another agency, just like you may be, we have our own water department, but you might be an IRWD because you live on the north side of town. It's the same in refuge too. So we have different rules, and current rules don't apply to that particular sand district. I don't know the answer to the final question there, what's going to happen in the end. So.
All right, well, let's have a round of applause for Dave and Dean. I never knew trash could be so interesting. Anyway, I want to thank Dave and Dean for coming this evening and spending their time with us. Also, let's hear it again for the bungalow. Be sure and go over and patronize the restaurant. We appreciate them supporting Speak Up Newport. Don't forget the comment cards. And then next month, we're going to do a little bit more serious program. Most of you have probably heard about the swastika incident that took place a few weeks ago. So we've reached out to the Newport Mesa School District and their Human Relations Task Force to come and help us put on a program here on human relations and tolerance in Newport Beach. I'm not quite sure who the speakers are going to be yet, but keep an eye out for our announcement, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Good evening.